Have you ever hooked a small fish and then all of a sudden it just turns into a big fish, and then this happens, your line breaks. So you realize that you probably got what a lot of anglers now refer to as a taxman. Sharks, Goliath Grouper, something big that eats your little fish and leaves you with broken line and retying. So this is a spot out in about 135 feet of water. It's a big ledge. So if you look at the bottom of the depthfinder there, you can see nice thick bottom, so real rocky. Right above it, there's a big red blob. That's usually Goliath or shark, something big hovering on the bottom. And then about 120 feet, you can see the camera. So this is why we were sitting at rest. So the camera going down, GoPro, I used my new rig. I lost my last one on a recent trip, unfortunately. Left it out while the boat was moving, not a great idea. So camera going down, and if you look, you can see some Goliaths kind of hovering at the top middle part of the screen there. And then a bunch of smaller fish, snapper. You've got yellowtail, some scamps, and a whole bunch of bait that, as the camera was going down, looks like cigar minnows kind of sitting there, which are good for holding all these other, fish in. And we wanted to catch snapper. And you can see all the yellowtails and quite a few scamps. And there's a second Goliath that makes its first appearance on this video. The spot here is a big ledge. Obviously, you can tell the Goliaths are doing a pretty good job of keeping it cleaned out because it goes up under a ways. There's a nice big undercut. Spots that Goliaths inherit, they usually do this too. So they're good for creating structure, but they can also be a bit of a pain when they attack hooked fish, which at the beginning of the video is obviously what happened. And by the end of this video, I'll be able to show you a pretty good look of it happening underwater. It might be the first time something like this has been filmed, and I think it's pretty unique. So you can see these scamp grouper are all sitting around this spot. Most of them, and when you get to 130 feet, they're going to be right around that legal size. If you get a little deeper, then you start getting, some 5-10 pounders. And it's probably my favorite eating grouper in the Gulf of Mexico. There's also some red snapper. We caught quite a few there on the day we were fishing. And if you look in the background there, you can see big Goliath sitting on a different part of the ledge, just kind of chilling, not really doing much. And so we got anchored on this spot. We're fishing. Bite's not really great. I got a couple yellowtails in a row. I think we got one keeper scamp. And then it kind of went quiet. Some red snapper and everything we were hooking seemed to be getting caught up in the Goliaths. There's also a lionfish there, if you can see right in the top middle. It's kind of swimming along the top part of the ledge. I wish the Goliaths would eat them, as they seem to be taking over more and more Gulf of Mexico spots. But yeah, everything we were hooking seemed to be getting run up by Goliaths. So we pulled a couple fish out of their mouths, but usually you're just ending up with broken tackle and a broken heart because they are taking everything you were eating. So just some more video of the ledge. It's very clear. So now you can see there's one Goliath in the background, there's another in the foreground, and another up on top of the ledge. So when you go back to look at the depthfinder video, that's probably what you're seeing right above the ledge. That's a big boy. That's probably a 200, 250 pounder. Not a whole lot you can do to stop a fish like that unless you've got, hand lined. And when I'm fishing spots like this, I'm usually trying to get snapper chummed up. They wouldn't really chum up. The current was moving away from the wind, and the trolling motor wasn't working, which made anchoring difficult, but I got us on the spot pretty good there. When the chum was moving with the current, obviously the snapper aren't really going to come up as easily. And so they were hanging out along the bottom, and trying to fish light tackle and get it all the way down isn't always the easiest thing, but we tried to make it work, and I got a couple keepers before we said, hey, we're sick of breaking off from Goliath, so let's get out of here. And so now you can see another Goliath. There's a little one kind of coming up under the ledge. So there's all sizes out here, and they all need to eat, and so they end up competing quite a bit for the food, and so that's when you get a hooked fish. If you are in shallow water and it's clear water, you might see 5 or 6 of them all trying to get your hooked fish. They're obviously pretty populated in the Gulf of Mexico at this point, and they're now, instead of just being on only reefs and wrecks, which we used to experience, now they're coming to a lot of these hard bottoms. I'm catching them all over ledges and even just some plain old rocks and in shallow water when I'm hog fishing in the summer. A spot like this, I would expect to hold a lot of gag grouper, and if you hooked one, you might never even get it up because a Goliath is going to come in and try to eat it, and that's very unfortunate. I know the way the rules are written now, the strictness on gag grouper season becoming shorter even in 2023, a place like this should be a haven for gags, but it's been overrun by Goliath grouper, and that's pretty unfortunate to see. Okay, so this is where things start to get pretty interesting in the video. If you look in the top middle, you will see a fish that starts to struggle. That is a fish that I hooked. At the beginning of the video, you saw me fighting something, and then all of a sudden I start recording because after 5 seconds of trying to get it up off the bottom, it is now going back down. I'm like, well, it's another Goliath. So that struggling fish is a scamp grouper. I'll put a big arrow on it so you can see it. So there's the hook scamp. It's struggling. I think I get it coming up. Oh, and there's the Goliath grouper comes flying in and decides that it's going to eat my hooked fish. So then it's going back down to the bottom, and it's trying to spit my hook because, hey, something feels wrong here. But it can't quite do it. So what do? They usually head for structure because it's where they feel safest. And probably right about there is where I feel my line break. So this Goliath, obviously with a little bit of pressure coming on its mouth, says, hey, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start stirring up a mess. And so there's also a shark in the ledge at the same time, and this other Goliath is looking at it like, hey, what just happened over here, man? What are you doing up under there? So now he's making a mess inside the ledge, kicking all the sand up and around. And in doing so, it seems to bring in some other curious fish. So on the left side there goes the big mangrove snapper. And look at the size of that hogfish that comes swimming up in 130 feet. That is a big male hog. So it's coming in like, hey, what are you guys doing over here? And then also on the left side in the distance there, you can see a big gag grouper. So this Goliath, when it decided to eat my fish and then go up under the ledge, probably starts, making its thumping noises. Divers will tell you all about that. When they feel a little stressed, they go in, and it's kind of like a defensive reflex. So in doing so, it brings all these fish in. There's a shark going back up under the ledge. Great view of it from over top right there. So that Goliath decides it wants to go take my fish up under the ledge and start making a mess. I think that might also hurt some of the snapper bite in other fish when you're trying to get them up in the water column when they get broken off like that. That Goliath grouper sending out that signal says, hey, something's wrong, I'm feeling stressed. It could also hinder your ability to catch other fish. And it's unfortunate to see spots like this that get overrun by not gag grouper. I wish they were overrun by gag grouper, by Goliath grouper. Because there's nothing you can do other than really just leave. If you're going to use light tackle in order to hook snapper, you can't get them up in time in order to get them past the Goliath grouper. They're not going to eat 40, 50, 60-pound leader that you need to just crank. They're eating, that 20-pound, maybe 30-pound leader that you got to have a little play with. And that's unfortunate. But I think the footage in itself is awesome. To see a Goliath in its natural habitat where it's trying to pick on prey that is obviously wounded and can't really defend itself and get away because it's hooked, that's what they're keying on. So to see it like that is pretty cool. To have the depthfinder look where you're knowing that, hey, this is a giant Goliath, knowing that these things are occurring on natural bottom, so to look out for it in the future and not necessarily spend a ton of time fishing a spot like this is probably a necessity. You just kind of need to move on and try to get away from it, and that's something we need to contend with now in the Gulf of Mexico, not just overfishing from anglers, but overfishing from Goliath grouper that take over spots. So I hope this was a good look for people so they can kind of see what anglers are dealing with in the Gulf of Mexico, and I will be certainly trying to post more of this content in the future. Thank you.